Hey everybody, welcome. This is chapter 11 from the OpenStax Psychology 2E online textbook. My name is Prescott. I'm here at Succinct Psychology, and so today we're going to be going through as much as we can of chapter 11 without going too long. I don't want you guys to get bored. So without further ado, let's get started. So personality. What makes two individuals have different personalities? Why are you and your friend, behave different ways? So first off, what is personality? Now, personality is the long-standing traits and patterns that propel individuals to consistently think, feel, and behave in specific ways. It comes from the Latin word persona, or a mask worn by an actor. And in ancient times, theatrical masks were used to represent/project a specific personality trait. So happy, sad, impatient, shy, fearful, curious, helpful. What characteristics describe your personality? You guys can let me know in the comments if you so please. But I don't know about you, but these masks are terrifying. I do not want to go to a play with those. Historical perspectives. So Hippocrates in 370 BCE theorized that personality traits and human behaviors are based on four separate temperaments associated with four fluids or humors of the body. You had choleric, which is yellow bile from the liver. That's how you got your personality. Kind of gross. Melancholic was black bile from the kidneys. Sanguine is red blood from the heart, and phlegmatic is white phlegm from the lungs. Now, Galen believed both diseases and personality differences could be explained by imbalances in the humors and that each person exhibits one of the four temperaments. So it was a prevalent view for over 1,000 years and through the Middle Ages. So choleric, again, that's yellow bile from the liver, they were passionate, ambitious, and bold. Melancholic is reserved, anxious, and unhappy, again, black bile from the kidneys. Sanguine is joyful, eager, and optimistic, and phlegmatic is calm, reliable, and thoughtful. And I think it's funny that these aren't particularly, like, phlegmatic doesn't sound like a compliment, and all these include bile from different parts of your body except blood from the heart, or phlegm, the stuff you cop up, phlegm. Phlegmatic, I don't know how to say that, but I think it's funny that that sounds like such an insult, but then it means calm, reliable, and thoughtful. So that was the prevalent view for over 1,000 years. This is how you got your emotions. Or not emotions, your personality. My bad. We did emotions in the last video. So, phrenology. Franz Gall in 1780 proposed that the distances between bumps on the skull reveal a person's personality traits, character, and mental abilities. It is discredited for lack of empirical support. Gall developed a chart that depicted which areas of the skull corresponded to particular personality traits or characteristics. So you can see here from Hothersall in 1995, he had this nice picture of which areas of the skull led to personality traits. And here we have an 1825 lithograph that depicts Gall examining the skull of a younger woman. So that's supposed to be Gall. That's him examining the skull. Now, continuing with historical perspectives, Immanuel Kant in the 18th century agreed with Galen that individuals could be characterized into one of the four temperaments, so he developed a list of traits to describe the personality of each of the four temperaments. Now, Wilhelm Wundt in the 19th century suggested that personality could be described using two major axes, the emotional/non-emotional, which separated strong emotions, melancholic, choleric, from the weak emotions, so phlegmatic or sanguine, and then the changeable/unchangeable divided the changeable temperaments, so choleric and sanguine, from the unchangeable ones, melancholic and phlegmatic. So here we have unchangeable temperaments, changeable temperaments, and strong emotions, weak emotions. So again, here the strong, you have melancholic and choleric, and the weak, you have phlegmatic and sanguine. Meanwhile, the changeable character or temperaments are choleric and sanguine, and unchangeable are melancholic and phlegmatic. And you can read here the different personality traits that make up each one of these areas, each one of these personality types. Continuing on with historical perspectives, we have the psychodynamic perspectives from the 20th century, good old Freud. It's the first comprehensive theory of personality explaining both normal and abnormal behaviors, and it proposed that unconscious drives influenced by sex, aggression, and childhood sexuality influence your personality. Now, neo-Freudians, so new Freudians, agreed that childhood experiences matter, but with less emphasis on sex, and focused on the social environment and effects of culture on personality. So, And this is another throwback, the levels of consciousness. So unconscious is the mental activity that we are unaware of and are unable to access. And according to Freud, we are only aware of a small amount, about 1/10 of our mind's activities, and most of it remains hidden from us in our unconscious. Now, unacceptable urges and desires are kept in our unconscious through repression. The information in our unconscious affects our behavior, although we are unaware of it. Again, unconscious, you're not conscious of it. Now, a Freudian slip is when Freud suggested that slips of the tongue, so saying a word you did not intend to say, are sexual/aggressive urges accidentally slipping out of your unconscious. And this actually happened to me just the other day. I was talking to somebody and I saw something else, and I don't want to get too into it, but I had a Freudian slip. I meant to say one word and I said another word that was like in my unconscious, what it was motivating me. So that's funny. I just had a Freudian slip the other day. All right, so the ID or id, ego, and superego. So Freud posited that personality results from effort to balance two competing forces. So 1, biological, aggressive, and pleasure-seeking drives, and 2, internal or socialized control over these pleasure-seeking drives. So Freud described this process as an interaction between 3 systems. And here you go, we can see right here, the superego, ego, and id. Remember, glacier. So id contains primitive urges for hunger, thirst, and sex. It is impulsive and instinctual, and it operates on the pleasure principle, so you seek immediate gratification. And the superego develops through interactions with others, learning social rules for right and wrong. A moral compass that tells us how we should behave based on rules, and it strives for perfection and judges behavior. So if you're not being perfect, you're not being moral, leads to feelings of pride or guilt. Now the ego or self attempts to balance the ID with the superego. It is the rational part of yourself, and it operates on the reality principle, helps the id satisfy desires in a realistic way. The part of the personality seen by others. So as you can see, can't see the superego, can't see the id. This isn't really the best chart for it, but the ego is the one that kind of determines your personality. It's one people see most clearly. So effects on personality: a balanced id and superego equals a healthy personality. Now, an imbalanced id and superego equals neurosis, or tendency to experience negative emotions, anxiety disorders, or unhealthy behaviors. So here's a nice little chart. Your superego, very moral, kind of superhero brain. It's not right to do that. Your id's like the villain. It's very primal. It wants pleasure principle, wants to get what it wants right away. But your ego makes compromise between the two, so you can, accomplish what your ID wants in a realistic manner. So, defense mechanisms, and oh boy, there's a lot of these. Unconscious protective behaviors that work to reduce anxiety. It is used by the ego to restore balance between the id and superego, and Freud believed them to be used by everyone, but the overuse could be problematic. So let's get into this. So with denial is refusing to accept real events because they are unpleasant. For example, Kalia refuses to admit she has an alcohol problem, although she is unable to go a single day without drinking excessively. So that's denial. Displacement, transferring inappropriate urges or behaviors onto a more acceptable or less threatening target. During lunch at a restaurant, Mark is angry at his older brother but does not express it and instead is verbally abusive to his server. Projection, attributing unacceptable desires to others. For example, Chris often cheats on her boyfriend because she suspects he's already cheating on her. So these are not some good defense mechanisms. Rationalization is justifying behaviors by substituting acceptable reasons for less acceptable real reasons. So, Kim failed his history course because he did not study or attend class, but he told his roommates that he failed because the professor didn't like him. That's him trying to rationalize it for himself. The reaction formation, reducing anxiety by adopting beliefs contrary to your own beliefs. Nadia is angry with her coworker Beth for always arriving late to work after a night of partying, but she is nice and agreeable to Beth and affirms the partying as cool. So, next we have regression, or returning to coping strategies for less mature stages of development. After failing to pass his doctoral examination, Giorgio spends days in bed cuddling his favorite childhood toy. He's regressing back to his childhood state. Then we have repression, or the suppressing painful memories and thoughts. Lucia cannot remember her grandfather's fatal heart attack, although she was present. It's repressing. Then we have sublimation, or redirecting unacceptable desires through socially acceptable channels. So, for example, Jerome's desire for revenge on the drunk driver who killed his son is channeled into a community support group for people who have lost loved ones to drunk driving. So those are all those defense mechanisms. And if I went a little too fast, you can always pause the video and just go through. This is good. Each defense mechanism along with a good example. So, continuing on. Next, we have the stages of psychosexual development. So Freud theorized that children pass through 5 psychosexual stages. In each stage, pleasure-seeking urges, the id, are focused on a different erogenous zone or part of the body. Now, lack of proper nurturing and parenting during conflicts results in the person becoming stuck/fixated in that stage. So the oral stage is from birth to 1 year. The erogenous zone is the mouth. Your pleasure is from eating and sucking. Major conflict being weaned from bottle or breast, and adult fixation is smoking, overeating, or nail biting. Then we have the anal stage, which is 1 to 3 years, erogenous zone anus, pleasure from bowel and bladder movements, major conflict, toilet training, adult fixation, anal retentive personality, they get stingy, stubborn, need for order and neatness, and anal expulsive personality, which is messy, careless, disorganized, prone to emotional outbursts. So let's see. Next, we have the phallic stage from 3 to 6 years. The erogenous zone is genitals, and the major conflict is the child feels a desire for the opposite sex parent and jealousy and hatred toward that same sex parent. So Oedipus complex for boys, desire for mother's attention, urge to replace father, afraid of being punished by father for these feelings, so castration anxiety. And then you have the Electra complex for girls, which is the desire for father's attention, urge to replace mother, and angry at mother for not providing them with a penis envy. The adult fixation is vanity and overambition. Next, we have the latency stage, which is the erogenous zone. There's none. Sexual feelings are dormant as children focus on school, friendships, hobbies, and engage with peers of the same sex. Then the genital stage is 12 plus. Erogenous zone is genitals. Sexual reawakening. Urges are redirected from parents to more socially acceptable partners. Now, Alfred Adler, individual psychology, focuses on our drive to compensate for feelings of inferiority. Now, inferiority complex is a person's feelings that they lack worth and don't measure up to the standards of others or of society. So social motives thought to be the force behind thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. It placed focus on social connections during childhood development, believed happiness can be found in working together for the betterment of all, and viewed main goal of psychology to be to recognize the equal rights and equality of others, saw conscious processes as more important, and theorized that birth order shapes our personality. Adler identified 3 fundamental social tasks all individual must experience. So first, you have the occupational tasks or careers, then you have societal tasks or friendship, and finally you have love tasks like finding an intimate partner. So, continuing on. Erik Erikson, his psychosocial theory of development is that personality develops throughout the lifespan. It emphasizes the importance of social relationships at each stage, and development of a healthy personality and sense of competence depend on successfully completing each of the 8 stages. Going on, we have Carl Jung. He did analytical psychology, which focused on working to balance conscious and unconscious thought. Carl Jung acknowledged the concept of a personal unconscious, but was also interested in exploring the collective unconscious. Now, collective unconscious is a universal version of personal unconscious, holding mental patterns or memory traces, which are common to all of us. And then there's archetypes, patterns that exist in our collective unconscious across cultures/societies. These are represented by universal themes in various cultures, reflecting common experiences of people around the world, and integration of unconscious archetypal aspects of the self seen as part of self-realization process. Now, persona is a mask that we consciously adopt, remember that from the beginning of the chapter, derived from conscious experiences and our collective unconscious, and a compromise between our true self and the self that society expects us to be. So hiding parts of the self that do not align with society's expectations, so like wearing a mask. And then this will be the last slide we do for this video. Next we have Carl Jung, extroversion versus introversion. Jung's most important contributions to the field of personality psychology was the idea of extroversion and introversion to explain different attitudes towards lights. So introverts, Energized by being alone, avoids attention, speaks slowly and softly, they think before speaking, stay on one topic, they prefer written communication, pay attention easily, and they are cautious. Now, extroverts, they're energized by being with others, extro, being out there, out with others, seek attention, they speak quickly and loudly, think out loud, they jump from topic to topic, prefer verbal communication, they're distractible, and they also act first and think later. So guys, that's all I got for today, but I will see you for part 2, hopefully, of chapter 11 here. And yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed the video, found it entertaining and educational. Again, my name is Prescott. I'm here at Succinct, Succinct Psychology, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you. Bye. Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Prescott. I'm here at Succinct, Succinct Psychology, and today we are going to continue, this is part 2, of going through chapter 11, Personality, from the OpenStax Psychology 2E online textbook. Last time, if you guys watched the video, I went way too far. Last time we discussed what is personality, the historical perspectives on personality, consciousness, id, ego, superego, what makes up your personality, the psychosexual development, Freud saying how we went through psychological stages, and when you're a child, you have different stages where there's different sexual zones or erogenous zones and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. So if you guys haven't watched that part, please do. It's very interesting stuff. And last time we stopped after this slide, Carl Jung, talking about extroversion versus introversion. Remember, an introvert, he's just easy to remember. They like to be inside, alone. I'm definitely more of an introvert. I do like having alone time. And versus an extrovert, somebody who gets energized and wants to be out and around people. So that's where we left off last time. So let's just keep on keeping on. So we have Karen Horney. She agreed, I'm assuming it's a she, agreed with Jung that individuals have the potential for self-realization and believed the goal of psychoanalysis should be moving toward a healthy self. Disagreed with the idea of penis envy. That was something that Freud brought up. Pretty sure it was Freud if I remember correctly, which suggested that any jealousy is culturally based. Differences in personality between men and women is culturally based. Men have womb envy because they cannot give birth, so the exact opposite of penis envy. Many of Horney's theories focused on unconscious anxiety. So normal growth can be blocked by basic anxiety stemming from needs not being met. So there are 3 styles of coping used by children to relieve anxiety. One is moving toward people. Means affiliation and dependence. As adults, likely to have an intense need for love and acceptance. So if you used, you would move towards people when you were a child, when you were, trying to relieve your anxiety, then as an adult, you probably have an intense need for love. Now, moving against people as a child, so aggression and assertiveness, as adults, they are likely to lash out and exploit others. And finally, should be a 3 there, oh, it says 2 again, moving away from people, detachment and isolation. As adults, likely to avoid love/friendship and avoid interactions with others. So her theory was that these 3 ways of coping, used as children, kind of determine how you're going to act as an adult. Now, the behavioral perspective, learning approaches to personality focus on observable, measurable phenomena. So Skinner said we learn to behave in particular ways. Personality is shaped by reinforcements and consequences in the environment. Personality develops over our entire life. We don't have our entire personality by the time we're, hitting puberty. And personality can vary as we experience new situations, so it's subject to change. So, the social cognitive perspective. So, Bandura agreed that personality develops through learning, but disagreed with the behaviorist approach because thinking and reasoning are important parts of learning. Now, the social cognitive theory emphasizes both learning and cognition as sources of individual difference in personality. Factors in personality development, reciprocal determinism, so cognitive processes, beliefs, expectations, and personality characteristics, behavior and context, so environment/situation, all interact. Now, observational learning is learning by observing someone else's behavior and its consequences. This teaches us which behaviors are acceptable and rewarded in our culture, and teaches us which behaviors are socially unacceptable. So that's observation, kind of in the name. Self-efficacy is the level of confidence in our own abilities. and it's developed through social experiences, and it affects how we approach challenges. So, if you're very confident in your own abilities, you're probably going to approach a challenge head on. So, reciprocal determinism. Bandura proposed the idea of reciprocal determinism. Our behavior, cognitive processes, and situational context all influence each other. As you can see here, these arrows are going back and forth in between all three of these. They all influence each other. Now, Julian Rotter and his locus of control, which was beliefs about the power we have over our lives, proposed as a cognitive factor that affects learning and personality development. Now, the internal locus of control tend to believe that most of our outcomes are the direct result of our efforts. I'm sorry, I just read that really weird for a second. Perform better academically, achieve more in careers, more independent, healthier, and less depressed. Whereas an external locus of control tend to believe that our outcomes are outside of our control, and they believe their lives are controlled by other people, luck, or chance. So if you have an internal locus of control, I am in control of my outcomes. They believe that one's effort and decisions determine the outcomes, whereas external outcomes are beyond my control. You believe that luck, fate, and other people determine that. A good example is if you have an internal locus of control and you take a test and you don't do so well, you will say, oh, it's because I didn't study. I need to study harder next time, or I need to do better, but it's my own fault. Where an external locus of control would be like, you take a test and you do really poorly on it, but even though you didn't study for it at all, you still blame, oh, well, it was because I didn't sleep good the night before, or the kid next to me was breathing weird and distracting me. You blame the outcome on somebody else, so it's external. Thought I'd give you guys a quick example there. So Walter Mischel, the person-situation debate. So Mischel's findings were that behavior was inconsistent across different situations, but more consistent within situations. Behavior is consistent in equivalent situations across time. This data did not support the theory that a person's personality traits are consistent across situations, triggered the person-situation debate among psychologists. Now, the marshmallow study was a study on marshmallow, I don't know if that's how you spell it might be a typo, but was the study on self-regulation, aka willpower, or the ability to delay gratification. So children, and I remember in multiple psychology courses seeing this video. It's pretty funny. You can find it on YouTube if you would like. But anyways, children were placed in a room with one marshmallow on the table, and they were told that they could either eat it now or wait until the researcher returned, and then they could have 2 marshmallows instead of 1. They revealed that children differ in levels of self-control. Children that had more self-control or waited for 2 marshmallows in preschool were more successful in high school, whereas children that had poor self-control or just took the 1 marshmallow in preschool are more likely to have academic and behavioral problems. So Mischel's approach to personality, that people use cognitive processes to assess the situation in their own way and behave in accordance with that interpretation. But that marshmallow video is really funny on YouTube. Like, some of the kids will try really hard and they can't do it. There's one little girl that as soon as the researcher walks out of the room, she grabs a marshmallow and eats it. That just doesn't care. Alrighty, so humanistic approaches. The humanistic approach focuses on how healthy people develop. Abraham Maslow studied people he considered healthy, creative, and productive. So Albert Einstein, Eleanor Roosevelt, Thomas Jefferson, and Abraham Lincoln. And he found that they shared similar characteristics. They were open, creative, loving, spontaneous, compassionate, concerned for others, and accepting of themselves. Now, Carl Rogers linked personality to self-concept, or the thoughts and feelings about ourselves. He divided the self into the ideal self and the real self. Now, the ideal self is the person you would like to be, whereas the real self, of course, is the person you actually are. He believed we need to define congruence between the ideal and real self, so thoughts about ideal self and real self are similar. So you need to get it to that. So high congruence means greater sense of self-worth and a healthy, productive life, and incongruence means you're maladjusted, you have maladjustment. So those are the humanistic approaches. So Carl Rogers, again, believed that he linked personality to self-concepts, your thoughts and feelings about yourself, and yeah, interesting stuff. So, biological approaches. The perspective that differences in our personalities can be explained by inherited predispositions and physiological processes. So, heritable traits, Minnesota study of twins reared apart found that identical twins, whether raised together or apart, have very similar personalities. This suggests the heritability of some personality traits. Traits with more than a 0.50 heritability ratio, I just can't talk today. So, for example, leadership, obedience to authority, a sense of well-being, alienation, resistance to stress, and fearfulness. Now, continuing, temperament. Temperament appears very early in life, suggesting a biological basis. Babies can be categorized into 1 of 3 departments: easy, difficult, or slow to warm up. Environmental factors and maturation can affect expression of personality. 2 dimensions of temperament important to adult personality: reactivity, or how we respond to new or challenging environmental stimuli, and self-regulation, or the ability to control responses. So, first we have, right here, we have somatotypes. So William H. Sheldon believed body type could be linked to personality. So he proposed 3 somatotypes. Endomorphs, they're relaxed, you can see right here. Relaxed, comfortable, good-humored, even-tempered, sociable, and tolerant. Mesomorphs, as seen in this middle one, they're adventurous, assertive, competitive, and fearless. And then ectomorphs, like ecto-cooler, anxious, self-conscious, artistic, thoughtful, quiet, and private. So he believed that your body type, and you can see that each one of these figures has a slightly different body type, could be linked to personality. Trait theorists believe that people have certain traits, so characteristics or ways of behaving. For example, optimistic or pessimistic, sociable or shy. Gordon Allport found 4,500 words in the English language to describe people and organized them into 3 categories, which is nuts. That's a lot of words to categorize. First, you have cardinal traits, dominates entire personality. That's pretty rare. You have central traits, they make up our personality, and then you have secondary traits. So they're less obvious or consistent and present under certain circumstances. So, example, preferences and attitudes would be kind of like that. So, Raymond Cattell narrowed Allport's list to about 171 traits, and he identified 16 dimensions of personality. Instead of a present being present or absent, people are scored on a continuum. So, Hans and Sybil EYSENCK, I'm sorry if I'm struggling in pronouncing these names, but there are some weird ones. So, Hans and Sybil, I'm not going to say EYSENCK, focused on temperament and believe that our personality traits are influenced by our genetic inheritance. So 2 specific personality dimensions: extroversion/introversion. If you're high in extroversion, you are sociable and outgoing, and if you are high in introversion, you have a high need to be alone, engage in solitary behaviors. Now, then you have the second personality dimension, neuroticism/stability. If you are high in neuroticism, you are anxious, overactive, and you have an overactive sympathetic nervous system. Then if you are high in stability, you are more emotionally stable. So here we have Hans and Sybil again. The EYSENCK describe 2 factors to account for variations in our personalities: extroversion/introversion and emotional stability/instability. So again, we have this chart. We saw this earlier in the last video. You have your unstable emotions right here, melancholic and choleric. Here you have the introverted personality, extroverted personality, and stable emotions. Alrighty, let's see. We got time for the 5-factor model. Well, I'm going to end the video here actually, so don't go too long. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you found it educational. I always struggle to think of that word. Educational and interesting and maybe a little entertaining. Again, my name is Prescott. I'm here at Succinct Psychology, and I hope you join me in what is probably going to be the last part of Chapter 11 and from the OpenStax Online 2E textbook. So I hope you guys have a great day, and hopefully see you next time. Thanks, bye. Hello everybody, welcome back. My name is Prescott. I'm here at Succinct Psychology, and today we are going to at least try to wrap up Chapter 11, Personality, from the OpenStax Online Psychology 2E textbook. In the last part, we went through, not that far, we went through the different perspectives, such as behavioral, social cognitive, we did reciprocal determinism, went through different psychologists, researchers, their ideas for origins of personality, how and why we have personality, how we determine all that stuff. So if you want to, fill in on that, then please go check out that video. So last time we left off right here, the 5-factor model. So in the 5-factor model, each person has 5 traits known as the Big 5 personality traits. Each trait is scored on a continuum from high to low, and the first letter of each trait spells the mnemonic ocean. So, ocean, or openness to experience, conscientiousness, it's hard for me to say that word, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So, going down the mnemonic, and remember, I think it was in the last chapter we talked about learning and how helpful mnemonics are for memorizing this kind of stuff. So if you need to memorize the 5-factor model, remember ocean, first letter of each word or each trait, because openness to experience is one word. So starting off, O, openness, imaginations, feelings, actions, ideas. If you have a low score in this, you are practical, conventional, you prefer routine. If you have a high score, you're curious with a wide range of interests and you're independent. Next, you have C, conscientiousness. It's competence, self-discipline, thoughtfulness. You're goal-driven. Low score is impulsive, careless, disorganized. High score is hardworking, dependable, and organized. Next, you have E, extroversion. You have sociability, your assertiveness, and emotional expression. Low score, you're quiet, reserved, withdrawn. And high score, outgoing, warm, you seek adventure. Next, you have A, agreeableness, so you're cooperative, trustworthy, and good-natured. If you have a low score, you are critical, unsupportive, or uncooperative, and suspicious. And then if you have a high score, you are helpful, trusting, and empathetic. And finally, N, neuroticism, which is tendency toward unstable emotions. Low score, you are calm, even-tempered, and secure. But if you're a high score, you have anxious, you're unhappy, and prone to negative emotions. So that is the 5-factor model. Next, we have the HEXACO model. So the HEXACO traits, here we have, again, it's another mnemonic. So first trait, honesty-humility. Example aspects of that trait is sincerity, modesty, and faithfulness. Emotionality, aspects of that are sentimentality, anxiety, and sensitivity. Then you have extroversion. Example aspects include sociability, talkativeness, and boldness. Next trait is agreeableness. Some example traits or examples of the trait are patience, tolerance, and gentleness. Then you have conscientiousness. I said it wrong again. Conscientiousness. There you go. Example aspects include organization, thoroughness, and precision. And finally, so many traits. We have openness, and example aspects of that trait are creativity, inquisitiveness, and innovativeness. Those are fun words to say, like that. Anyways, so cultural understandings of personality. Culture is one of the most important environmental factors that influences personality. Now, culture are beliefs, customs, art, and traditions of a particular society. So, question, are personality traits the same across cultures, or are there variations? And the answer is there are both universal and culture-specific aspects that account for variation in personalities. Examples, Asian cultures are more collectivist and tend to be less extroverted. Central and South American cultures tend to score higher on openness to experience, whereas Europeans tend to score higher on neuroticism, which isn't good because you remember from the 5-factor model, that has a tendency toward unstable emotions. So it is not good that all of Europe has a tendency for that, apparently. All right. Next, we have regional differences. So researchers found 3 distinct regional personality clusters in the United States. People tend to be friendly and conventional in the upper Midwest and deep South. So here you can see cluster 1. It's kind of hard for me to see it, but it's the solid blue. So these highlighted states, or collected states, they're friendly and conventional, relaxed, emotionally stable, and creative in the West. Wait one second, let me back up there. People tend to be friendly and conventional in the upper Midwest and deep South, relaxed, emotionally stable, and creative in the West, so out here. And then stressed, irritable, and depressed in the Northeast, so up here in the New York, Washington, D.C. area. So one explanation for this is selective migration. People choose to move to places that are compatible with their personality and needs, so maybe that's why in the upper Midwest and deep South, People tend to be more relaxed and emotionally stable. Next, we have individualist versus collectivist cultures. Now, individualist, remember that's what it referred to as Asian cultures leaning more towards. They value independence, competition, and personal achievement. Mainly Western nations such as the US, England, and Australia, and people display more personally oriented personality traits. Oh wait, no, forgive me, that wasn't what I meant. Asian cultures, collectivist. I got twisted there. I was like, wait a second, that's not right. So yeah, people display more personally oriented personality traits. Then we have collectivist cultures, where they value social harmony, respectfulness, and group needs over their own individual needs. This includes areas that have collectivist cultures include Asia, Africa, and South America, and people display more socially oriented personality traits. Next, we have self-report inventories. So, personality testing is often used to screen applicants for employment and job training, in criminal cases and custody battles, and to assess psychological disorders. Now, self-report inventories is an objective test to assess personality. They often use multiple choice items or numbered scales, like Likert scales. Now, the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, or the MMPI, I've actually taken that before, it's very long, is one of the most widely used personality inventories, originally developed to assist in diagnosing psychological disorders. And the newest version, the MMPI R2 or 2RF, has 338 questions and is scored on 10 scales: hypochondriasis, depression, hysteria, psychopathic deviance, masculinity versus femininity, paranoia, and psychasthenia, or obsessive compulsive qualities, schizophrenia, hypomania, and social introversion. So Likert scales, this is like an example of one. If you've ever taken a survey, you're probably familiar with Likert type scale questions. Most personality inventories employ these types of response scales. So they will ask you a question, I'm easygoing, and then you indicate whether you strongly disagree or strongly agree, or no opinion, somewhat disagree, somewhat agree. I've seen these a million times. On MMPI, these true-false questions resemble the kinds of questions you would find on the MMPI. So, I like gardening magazines, you choose true or false. I'm unhappy with my sex life, true or false. So it's less of a variation in your answer choices, you only have true or false. Now, projective testing, projective testing relies on projection, which is a defense mechanism, if you remember from earlier in this chapter, to assess unconscious processes. So they use ambiguous cards are shown to individual who is asked to tell a story, interpret an image, or complete a sentence. Now, an individual will project feelings, impulses, and desires onto the cards. So, for example, this one's pretty famous with the Rorschach inkblot test. Individual interprets a series of symmetrical inkblot cards, revealing unconscious feelings and struggles. So here would be an example of a Rorschach inkblot. Then you have the thematic apperception test, or the TAT. Individual tells a story about 8 to 12 ambiguous cards, giving insight into their social world, revealing hopes, fears, interests, and goals. Then you have the Rotter incomplete sentence blank, or the RISB. An individual is asked to complete 40 incomplete sentences as quickly as possible to reveal desires, fears, and struggles. So, for example, a Rotter incomplete sentence blank: I feel blank, I regret blank, at home blank, my mother blank. These incomplete sentences resemble the types of questions on the RISB. How would you complete these sentences? You can think to yourself and maybe type a quick comment, these 5 example problems, and again, want to keep it to yourself. The point is not just to fill out the sentence, it's also to do it in a time limit to try and, reveal your true emotions and thoughts. So, maybe run this by yourself, maybe you can learn a bit about yourself. But anyways, that concludes chapter 11. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you, enjoyed the videos. And I will hopefully see you for the next chapter. Again, my name is Prescot. I'm here at Succinct, Succinct Psychology. And yeah, hope you guys have a great day. Take care. Bye. Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Prescott. I'm here at Succinct Psychology, and today we are going to start Chapter 12, Social Psychology, from the online OpenStax Psychology 2E textbook. So without further ado, let's get going. So Social psychology, how does the presence of other people influence the behavior of individuals, dyads, and groups? So Trayvon Martin, 17, was shot to death at the hands of George Zimmerman, a volunteer neighborhood watchman, in 2012. Was his death the result of self-defense or a racial bias? That question drew hundreds of people to rally on each side of this heated debate. Excuse me. So what is social psychology? Social psychology deals with all kinds of interactions between people, spanning a wide range of how we connect, from moments of confrontation to moments of working together and helping others. Social psychologists believe that an individual's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are influenced by social situations. So intrapersonal topics include emotions and attitudes, the self, and social cognition, while interpersonal topics include helping behavior, aggression, prejudice and discrimination, attraction and close relationship, and group processes and intergroup relationships. So right here we have, this would be an interpersonal topic, because you can see all these people are helping get this car up the hill. Now, situational and dispositional influences on behavior. Now, situationism is the view that our behavior and actions are determined by our immediate environment and surroundings. It is used by social psychologists. Then we have dispositionism, the view that our behavior is determined by internal factors, an attribute of a person such as personality traits and temperament. So this is favored in the US and is used by personality psychologists. Modern social psychologists often consider both the situation and individual, so not just one or the other. Next, we have the fundamental attribution error. So the fundamental attribution error is the tendency to overemphasize internal factors as explanations/attributions for the behavior of other people and underestimate the power of the situation. People tend to fail to recognize when a person's behavior is due to situational variables. So, for example, we have the Quizmaster study. Participants were randomly assigned to play the role of either the questioner or participant. Questioners developed difficult questions to which they knew the answers, and participants answered questions correctly 4 out of 10 times. Participants tended to disregard the influence of the situation and wrongly concluded that a questioner's knowledge was greater than their own. So that's the Quizmaster study. Now, is the fundamental attribution error a universal phenomenon? Does it occur everywhere? Research suggests that people from an individualistic culture have the greatest tendency to commit the fundamental attribution error. People from collectivistic cultures, and we talked about the difference between a collectivistic versus individualistic culture in the most recent video, so part 3 of the chapter 11. So, anyways, just letting you guys know if you wanted more detail about that. But people from collectivistic cultures, such as some Asian cultures, are more likely to emphasize relationships with others than to focus primarily on the individual. Collectivists, they're in it together. Now, focusing on others provides a broader perspective, including both situation and cultural influences. So, activities such as A, preparing meals, can be seen here. I don't know why I'm pointing at it, like you guys can see my hands. B, hanging out, and C, playing a game, engage people in a group. Now, actor-observer bias is the phenomenon of explaining other people's behaviors are due to internal factors and our own behaviors are due to situational forces. Now, we often make the fundamental attribution error because we do not have enough information to make a situational explanation about the person's behavior. However, when we explain our own behaviors, we have more information available and are more likely to make situational explanations. One study investigated reasons male participants gave for why they liked their girlfriend. Now, actor-observer bias is evident when subjects explain their own reasons for liking their girlfriend, example, her personality, versus their impressions of others' reasons for liking a girlfriend. So, situational traits were much higher than the dispositional traits, so situational external, own reasons for liking a girlfriend, but then the friend's reasons for liking a girlfriend, these situational traits here in like the kind of purple color, were about equal to the dispositional traits. Next, we have a self-serving bias. It is the tendency of an individual to take credit by making dispositional or internal attributions for positive outcomes, but situational or external attributions for negative outcomes. And it protects your self-esteem and allows people to feel good about their accomplishments. Now, attribution is a belief about the cause of a result. One model of attribution proposes 3 dimensions. Locus of control, so internal versus external. We also talked about that in the last chapter. Again, internal locus of control, you blame your own actions, your own failings when you mess up something. External, it's somebody else's fault. Next, we have stability, the extent to which the circumstances are changeable. And finally, controllability, extent to which the circumstances can be controlled. When our team wins, we make attributions such as it's talented, internal, works hard, stable, and uses effective strategies, controllable. So all three of those dimensions. Now, when our team loses, we might say the other team has more experienced players. So the external locus of control, the other team played at home, it is unstable, and the weather affected our team's performance, so it's an uncontrollable thing. And I don't think the weather could affect the team's performance in a hockey game, but I get what I put the picture there. Next, we have the just world I'm sorry, guys, I can't talk today. The just world hypothesis, and is a consequence of the tendency to provide dispositional explanations for behavior is victim blame. Just world hypothesis, belief that people get the outcomes they deserve. It's based on the belief that the world is a fair place, and therefore good people experience positive outcomes and bad people experience negative outcomes. It allows people to feel that the world is predictable and we have some control over life outcomes. People who hold just world beliefs tend to blame the people in poverty for their circumstances, ignoring situational and cultural causes of poverty. Social roles. Social role is a pattern of behavior that is expected of a person in a given setting or group. Example, being a student, we each have several social roles defined by culturally shared knowledge, and behavior related to social roles varies across situations. So being a student is just one of the many social roles you have. Next, we have social norms and scripts. Now, a social norm is a group's expectation of what is appropriate and acceptable behavior for its members. So, how are we supposed to behave and think? What are we supposed to talk about? And what are we expected to wear? Now, script is the person's knowledge about the sequence of events expected in a specific setting. So, how do you act when you walk into an elevator on the first day of school or in a restaurant? Scripts can vary between cultures, or they do vary, and important sources of information to guide behavior in situations. So, for example, young people struggle to become independent. At the same time, they're desperately trying to fit in with their peers. So, Philip Zimbardo, the Stanford prison, that picture really just shocked me there. I did not expect that. The Stanford prison experiment, 1971, this is very interesting stuff right here, but it demonstrated the power of social roles, social norms, and scripts. A mock prison was constructed and participants, male college students, were randomly assigned to play the role of prisoners or guards. In a very short amount of time, the guards started to harass the prisoner in an increasingly sadistic manner. Prisoners began to show signs of severe anxiety and hopelessness. The 2-week study had to be ended after just 6 days. The social norms required guards to be authoritarian and prisoners to be submissive. And the scripts influenced the way guards degraded the prisoners by making them do push-ups and removing privacy. The parallels of abuse used by guards this parallels the abuse used by guards in the Abu Ghraib prison. So if you don't know, Iraqi prisoners of war were abused by their American captors in the Abu Ghraib prison during the Second Iraq War, and they were not treated very well. So this prison experiment kind of reinforced and paralleled the treatment of prisoners of war in that prison. So, attitude is our evaluation of a person, an idea, or an object. It can be positive or negative. It can be influenced by external forces and internal factors that we control. And there are 3 components. 1, affective component, or feelings. 2 is the behavioral component, the effect of the attitude on behavior. And 3, we have the cognitive component, or the belief and knowledge. So, cognitive dissonance. Leon Festinger's theory of cognitive dissonance. Now, cognitive dissonance is a psychological discomfort arising from holding 2 or more inconsistent attitudes, behaviors, or cognitions. Believing cigarettes are bad for your health, but smoking cigarettes anyway can cause cognitive dissonance. To reduce cognitive dissonance, individuals can change their behavior by quitting smoking, change their belief through rationalization or denial, such as discounting the evidence that smoking is harmful, or they can add a new cognition. Smoking suppresses appetite so I don't become overweight, which is good for my health. Later research found only conflicting cognitions that threaten positive self-image cause dissonance. Dissonance can also cause physiological arousal and activate brain regions involved in emotions and cognitive functioning. So here's an example or a nice chart, cognitive dissonance. The dissonance, smoking is bad for your health, and you are a smoker, leads to cognitive dissonance. So you remove the dissonance tension. So for example, smoking is bad for your health, gonna quit smoking to remove it. Otherwise, you could do, the research is inconclusive, I'm still a smoker, but we don't know for sure if it gives you lung cancer, that kind of thing. Now the effect of initiation. So justification of effort has a distinct effect on a person liking a group. A difficult initiation into a group influences us to like the group more. The Aronson and Mills experiment in 1959, college students volunteered to join a group that would regularly meet to discuss the psychology of sex. 3 conditions: no initiation, easy initiation, and difficult initiation. Students in the difficult initiation condition liked the group more than students in other conditions due to the justification of effort. So here you can see none, the relative magnitude of liking a group. None was the lowest, easy was a bit higher, but difficult initiation that led to the participants to be much more positive about the group. So persuasion is the process of changing our attitudes towards something based on some kind of communication. How do people convince others to change their attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors? We encounter attempts at persuasion attempts everywhere. Persuasion is not limited to formal advertising. We are confronted with it throughout our everyday world. So here you can see persuasions. Person has one too many stickers on their car, I think. Elaboration likelihood model. Petty and Kakiopo, I hope I'm saying that right. 1986, persuasion can take one of 2 paths, and then the durability of the end result depends on the path. So, central route, logic-driven, uses data and facts. It's a direct route to persuasion, focusing on the quality of information, and it works best when the audience is analytical and willing to engage in processing of the information. Next, we have the peripheral route, or the edge. It's the indirect route. It uses peripheral cues to associate positivity with the message. It uses characteristics such as positive emotion or celebrity endorsement, and finally results in less permanent attitude change. Next we have, well, no, not next, just a chart, to better break it down. The elaboration likelihood model. Again, Petty and Kakiopo in 1986. You have your persuasive message. Going down the central route, the audience is motivated, analytical, processing is high effort, and you have to evaluate the message, and the persuasion is a lasting change in attitude. Meanwhile, the peripheral route, or the roundabout, audience is not motivated, not analytical, the processing is low effort, persuaded by cues outside a message, and the persuasion is temporary change in attitude. Next, we have a foot in the door technique. I'm sure you guys have heard of this. Persuader gets a person to agree to a small favor only to later request a larger favor. So our past behavior often directs our future behavior or desire to maintain consistency. So with the foot in the door technique, a small request such as A, wearing a campaign button, can turn into a large request such as B, putting campaign signs in your yard. So, yeah, like it says, foot in the door, we give up one little request to then try and, I think of it like a cartoon, person trying to close the door on somebody, they stick their foot in the door, and then they push it into the room. And all of a sudden you've got a million Obama and Biden signs in your yard. Next, we have conformity from Solomon Ask. Conformity is the change in a person's behavior to go along with the group, even if he does not agree with the group. Now, Ask is an experiment. These line segments illustrate the judgment task in Ask's conformity study. Which line on the right, A, B, or C, is the same length as line X on the left? So, which line from A, B, and C is the same length as X? So the Ask effect, the influence of the group majority on an individual's judgment. In Ask's study, there was one naive subject. The rest were Confederates who purposely gave the wrong answer. Oh, I remember this now. I remember seeing this study. There's a lot of these studies, if you're interested, you can find videos on YouTube of organizations conducting pretty much the exact same study, so you can get to see how people react. It's pretty entertaining. It's really funny, actually. So anyways, 76% of participants conform to group pressure at least once by also indicating the incorrect line. So what factors make a person more likely to conform? The size of the majority. So the greater the majority, the more likely an individual will conform. and the presence of another dissenter causes conformity rates to drop to near zero. The public or private nature of the responses. Public responses cause more conformity than private. So voting for government officials in the United States is private to reduce the pressure of conformity. That's why when you go to a voting booth, you can't see somebody else's response, because then it would influence you conform to whoever's winning. So for example, the experiment, at least you can tell if you look at it that line C is the same length as line X. But if you were in a large crowd and everybody was saying that line A was the one, you might conform and say, okay, yeah, line A is the one, because everybody around me is saying so. So, motivation to conform. Well, actually, we will finish up this. I didn't realize how fast I was going, or how long I was going for, guys. I apologize, but I hope you found this video interesting and educational, maybe a bit entertaining with me constantly stumbling on my own words. But again, my name is Prescott. I'm here at Succinct, Succinct Psychology, and in the next video we will wrap up Chapter 12. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks, bye. Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Prescott. I'm here at Succinct, Succinct Psychology, and today we are going to be continuing Chapter 12, Social Psychology. Last time we spoke about what social psychology was, situational and dispositional influences on behavior, different ways of fundamental attribution error, all these basic things about how we have social scripts and norms and all this other good stuff, and why we have that. So today we are going to continue this chapter. So first we have motivation to conform. You have the normative social influence. People conform to the group norm to fit in, to feel good, and to be accepted by the group. And informational social influence. People conform because they believe the group is competent and has the correct information, particularly when the task or situation is ambiguous. So see here, figure A, they're all sitting quietly, so the social influence there is that, okay, I'm not going to stand up and start screaming, whereas image B, it's the complete opposite, everybody's screaming and freaking out. So next we have obedience, Stanley Milgram. So the change of an individual's behavior to comply with the demand by an authority figure. The Milgram experiment showed the surprising degree to which people obey authority. Participants were told to shock learners, the Confederate, for giving a wrong answer to test items, and participants believed that they were giving the learner shocks, which increased all the way up to 450 volts, which is a lot. Now, 2 out of 3, or 65% of participants, continued to administer shocks to an unresponsive learner. So, groupthink and group polarization. Groupthink is the modification of the opinions of members of a group to align with what they believe is the group consensus. Groups often take action that individuals would not perform outside the group setting because groups make more extreme decisions than individuals do. Members are less likely to express diverse opinions, which can lead to faulty decision making. Now, group polarization is the strengthening of an original group attitude after the discussion of views within a group. So does your opinion change if you find someone attractive but your friends do not agree? You guys can let me know in the comments if you want to. If you're in a large group of friends and you say something and they all disagree, does that change your opinion? Oh, whoops. Next one, not the same one. Next, we have social facilitation and social loafing. Now, social facilitation occurs when an individual performs better when an audience is watching than when the individual performs behavior alone. This usually occurs when people are performing a task for which they are skilled or an easy task. However, when people are nervous or less skilled, an audience may hinder rather than help. Next, we have social loafing, which is the exertion of less effort by a person working together with a group. It occurs when individual performance cannot be evaluated separately from the group. Group performance declines on easy tasks. However, when a task is difficult, people feel more motivated and believe that their group needs their input to do well on a challenging project. Next, we have prejudice and discrimination. So right here, we have a 1939 sign in German. Occupied Poland warns no interest for Poles. Here we have an image of an African-American man drinking at a colored water fountain. It's because they weren't allowed to drink from a white water fountain back in 1939 during the era of racial segregation. And then you have the Westboro Baptist Church. It's a hate group that attacks people for their religion and sexual orientation. These are all forms of prejudice and discrimination. So So understanding prejudice and discrimination. Now, prejudice is a negative attitude and feeling toward an individual based solely on one's membership in a particular social group. For example, I hate Yankee fans, they make me angry. Now, stereotype is a specific belief or assumption about individuals based solely on their membership in a group. So, for example, Yankees fans are arrogant and obnoxious. That's a stereotype. Now, discrimination is a negative action. So that's the difference between discrimination and prejudice. Prejudice is an attitude or feeling, while discrimination is an action. So it is a negative action toward an individual as a result of one's membership in a particular group. For example, I would never hire nor become friends with a person if I knew he or she were a Yankees fan. That's an action. Why do prejudice and discrimination exist? Well, we can blame social learning and conformity to social norms. So, types of prejudice and discrimination. Now, there's racism, which is prejudice and discrimination against an individual based on race. There's the dual attitudes model. Explicit means it's conscious and controllable, and implicit means it's unconscious and uncontrollable. Most people no longer show extreme racial bias on measures of explicit attitudes, but measures of implicit attitudes often provide evidence of mild to strong racial bias/prejudice. This can explain why modern forms of racism are hard to detect. Now, ageism is prejudice and discrimination toward individuals based solely on their age, and is typically against older adults. And homophobia is the prejudice and discrimination of individuals based solely on their sexual orientation. It often results in discrimination of individuals from social groups, and it's very widespread in U.S. society. So, going further into detail, we have sexism. It is the prejudice and discrimination toward individuals based on their sex. Common examples include gender role expectations and expectations for how a gender group should behave. It consists on a societal level, affects employment and education opportunities. Women now have many jobs previously closed to them, though they still face challenges in male-dominated occupations. So you can see right here, this woman is serving in the military, previously couldn't, but she's probably facing a lot of challenges being in that male-dominated field. So, self-fulfilling prophecy and confirmation bias. Now, self-fulfilling prophecy is an expectation held by a person that alters his or her behavior in a way that tends to make it true. So stereotypes lead to expectations about that stereotype, which leads to you treat the person according to your expectations, which leads to that influence the person to act according to stereotypic expectations, which then confirms the person who had the stereotypical beliefs. Now, Rosenthal and Jacobson, 1968, disadvantaged students who had teachers that expected them to perform well had higher grades than disadvantaged students whose teachers expected them to do poorly. Now, confirmation bias is a tendency to seek out information that supports our stereotypes and ignore information that is inconsistent with our stereotypes. Next, we have in-groups and out-groups. An in-group is a group that we identify with or see ourselves as belonging to, while an out-group is a group that we view as fundamentally different from us. In-group bias is prejudice and discrimination because the out-group is perceived as different and is less preferred than our in-group. So we want to feel good and protect our in-groups. Our forces that promote reconciliation between groups is the expression of empathy, acknowledgement of past suffering on both sides, and the halt of destructive behaviors. Scapegoating is the act of blaming an out-group, so a group that we view as fundamentally different from us, when the in-group experiences frustration or is blocked from obtaining the goal. Next, we have aggression, which is seeking to cause harm or pain to another person. You have hostile aggression, which is motivated by feelings of anger with intent to cause pain, for example, in a bar fight. Instrumental aggression, which is motivated by achieving a goal and does not necessarily involve intent to cause pain. This is typically displayed by women, and example, communication that impairs the social standing of another person. Frustration aggression theory is when humans are prevented from achieving an important goal, they become frustrated and aggressive. We have the evolutionary theory of aggression, which is that aggression serves an evolutionary function. Men are more likely to show aggression, and it likely serves to display dominance over other males, for example, to protect a mate or to perpetuate, there you go, the male's genes. Human males and non-human male primates endeavor to gain and display dominance over other males, as demonstrated in the behavior of these monkeys. They're yelling and fighting, trying to establish dominance. Now, bullying is the repeated negative treatment of another person over time. It includes the attempt to inflict harm, injury, or humiliation. It can include physical or verbal attacks, and it can also be psychological. Gender differences, boys tend to engage in direct physical aggression, while girls tend to engage in the indirect social forms of aggression, for example, spreading rumors, ignoring, or socially isolating others. Effects on the victim decrease mental health, including anxiety and depression, and may underperform in schoolwork. Now, cyberbullying is repeated behavior that is intended to cause psychological or emotional harm to another person, more common in girls, usually in those that have been victims of cyberbullying themselves. Next, we have the bystander effect. So Kitty Genovese, 1964, was attacked and killed with a knife outside her apartment building. Residents in the apartment building heard her scream for help numerous times but did nothing. So that shows bystander effect. Now, Latane and Darley, the bystander effect is the phenomenon in which a witness/bystander does not volunteer to help a victim or person in distress. This is based on the social situation and is not personality, or there's not personality variables. And the diffusion of responsibility is a tendency for no one in a group to help because the responsibility to help is spread throughout the group. You just assume somebody else is going to help. Next, we have pro-social behavior and altruism. Pro-social behavior is voluntary behavior with the intent to help other people. Altruism is people's desire to help others even if the costs outweigh the benefits of helping. Sorry, that picture distracted me. Anyways, so the events of 9/11 unleashed an enormous show of altruism and heroism on parts of first responders and many ordinary people. So, theories on the motivation to help, empathy. Empathy is the capacity to understand another person's perspective and to feel what he/she feels. Empathetic people make emotional connections with others and feel compelled to help. Altruism is a form of selfless helping, not motivated by benefits, and so you are feeling good after helping is a consequence, not a cause. And finally, on theory of motivation to help, is that helping is self-serving because our egos are involved and we receive benefits. You feel better after you've done something good for somebody else. So, moving on, we're just going to power through here and finish up these last slides for this unit. So, forming relationships. What influences who we become friends with and form romantic relationships with? Proximity, the people with whom you have the most contact, and similarity, people who are similar to us in background, attitudes, and lifestyle. Now, homophily is the tendency for people to form social networks with others who are similar. So, important concept or components of relationships. Reciprocity, the give and take in relationships. We contribute to relationships, but expect to receive benefits in return. And then self-disclosure, or the sharing of personal information, which leads to more intimate connections. So many couples share a cultural background, as you can see here. Attraction. What features of a person do we find attractive? So universally attractive features, so for everybody, in women, physically, large eyes, high cheekbones, a narrow jawline, a slender build, and a lower waist to hip ratio. Social traits include warmth, affection, and social skills. Men, physical traits include being tall, having broad shoulders and a narrow waist. And social traits are achievement, leadership qualities, and job skills. Now, the matching hypothesis is people tend to pick someone they view as their equal in physical attractiveness and social desirability. So, Sternberg's triangular theory of love. 7 types of love can be described from combinations of 3 components: intimacy, sharing of details and intimate thoughts and emotions; passion, or physical attraction; and commitment, standing by the person. So here you have your 7 different types of love. You have liking, intimacy; romantic love, passion plus intimacy; infatuation, which is just passion; companionate love, intimacy plus commitment; empty love, which is just commitment; and fatuous love, which is passion and commitment. And finally, you have consummate love, which is a combination of all 3. So, Sternberg's triangular theory of love. According to Sternberg, consummate love describes a healthy relationship containing intimacy, passion, and commitment. Again, right here, it's healthy, it's got all 3, not just intimacy, not just commitment, and not just passion. Just having one isn't so good. So, finally, and then we're done with chapter 12, social exchange theory. What determines whether we are satisfied with and stay in a relationship? So the social exchange theory states that acting like naive economists, people may keep track of the cost and benefits of forming and maintaining a relationship. Typically, only those relationships in which the benefits outweigh the cost will be maintained. So that's a social exchange. You don't want to continue a relationship where the cost is greater than the benefits that's staying in that relationship. you don't want to be in that. It's not a good economic choice. Anyway, guys, that is the end of chapter 12. I'm sorry if I went a little fast, but I didn't want to go too slow and then only have like 3 slides left for the next video, and it's like a 30-second video. So I hope you guys enjoyed this chapter. And again, sorry, 1 second. And again, my name is Prescott. I'm here at Succinct Psychology. Please leave any questions or comments, about the video, whether I can do something to make it better for you guys, more entertaining. Please leave a comment. And I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you hopefully for the next chapter. Have a good day. Bye.